You wake up one morning and the company memo says your pension fund lost 40% overnight. You spent 30 years feeding that account, 30 years of deferred wages, 30 years of trusting the promise that if you just kept working, kept contributing, kept your head down, you would be safe in old age. And now some analyst on television is telling you it was always a gamble. They call it market volatility. They call it economic headwinds. But here is what they will never call it: theft by design. The pension was never meant to protect you. It was designed to keep you working until your body gave out and to make sure you never accumulated enough power to walk away. This is not a modern invention. This is not some accident of capitalism. This is a control mechanism that has been refined over centuries. And right now, in this moment, you are living inside the latest version of a trap that was set long before you were born. Let me take you back to where this truly begins. Feudal Europe. A peasant works the land. He produces grain, wool, livestock, but he does not own the output. The Lord does. In exchange for labor, the peasant receives just enough to survive the winter. Not thrive, survive. This was called subsistence provision. The system had a simple rule: give them enough to live, but never enough to leave. If the peasant saved too much, he might buy land elsewhere. He might gain independence. So the Lord structured the deal to guarantee perpetual dependence. You eat today, you work tomorrow, forever. But peasants grew restless. Plagues killed workers. Labor became scarce. The survivors demanded more. And so the feudal class had to evolve their trap. They could not rely on raw coercion alone anymore. They needed a new tool. They needed the illusion of security. Enter the guild system. By the 14th century, European tradesmen were offered something unprecedented. If you worked loyally within the guild structure, if you paid your dues and followed the rules, you would be cared for in sickness and old age. The guild maintained funds. They called them fraternity chests, mutual aid societies. But here is what those chests really were: leverage. Because once you paid into the system, you could not leave without losing everything. Your contributions were not portable. They were locked inside the guild. Leave the city, change your trade, anger the masters, and your security vanished. You were trapped by your own accumulated labor. This brings us to stage 1, the lure. The system offers you a deal that sounds almost noble. Work for us, contribute a portion of your earnings, and we will guarantee your future. They show you the math. They show you projections, compound interest, growth charts, a comfortable retirement. The promise is always the same: sacrifice now, safety later. And you believe it, because you are supposed to believe it, because everyone around you believes it, because the alternative, planning for old age entirely on your own, feels impossible in an economy designed to keep you one paycheck away from ruin. Stage 2 arrives quietly: dependency. You have been contributing for 5 years, then 10. The account grows. You check the balance and feel a strange pride. You are doing the responsible thing. You are securing your future. But something else is happening beneath the surface. You are now behaviorally locked in. Economists have a term for this: the sunk cost fallacy. You have invested so much that walking away feels like failure. And so you stay at the job longer than you want to. You tolerate conditions you would have once refused. You swallow the pay freeze. You accept the reorganization. Because leaving means abandoning years of contributions. The pension has become a chain disguised as a safety net. Then comes stage 3. The promise starts to crack. This is the part they do not teach you in school. Pensions are not vaults filled with gold coins waiting for you. They are financial instruments. They are investment vehicles. Your contributions are pooled with thousands of others and placed into markets, bonds, real estate, equities. The managers take fees. The fund sponsors take cuts. And when the markets stumble, when the bets go wrong, the fund loses value. But you still worked those years. You still deferred that income. The labor was real. The losses are just numbers on a screen, they tell you. But those numbers represent your life, your time, your body breaking down in warehouses and offices and construction sites. Let me show you how this played out in history. 18th century Britain. The Industrial Revolution roars to life. Factories multiply. Workers flood into cities. and the factory owners face a problem. How do you keep a workforce stable when the conditions are brutal and the pay is barely survival wages? The answer: company welfare schemes. Early pension programs tied directly to employment. Stay with the company for 20 years and you receive a modest income in old age. Leave early and you get nothing. This was not charity. This was industrial social control. The pension locked workers into exploitative conditions because the alternative was destitution in old age. The companies called it benevolence. The workers called it survival. History should call it what it was: a leash. By the late 19th century, governments noticed something useful. If companies could use pensions to control labor, states could use them to control populations. Germany, under Otto von Bismarck, introduced the first state pension system in the 1880s. It was brilliant in its cynicism. Workers would contribute throughout their lives. In return, they would receive payments starting at age 65. But here is the detail that reveals the game. Life expectancy for laborers at the time was under 60. Most workers died before collecting a single payment. The system was designed to extract contributions from the many and pay out to the few. It created the illusion of a social contract while enriching the state. It was taxation disguised as insurance. Stage 4 is where the mathematics turn predatory. You are now decades into your career. The pension fund has been your North Star. Then the company announces changes. They are switching from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. The language is bureaucratic. The implications are catastrophic. Under the old system, you were promised a specific payout. The company bore the investment risk. Under the new system, you bear the risk. The company contributes a match. But the final amount depends entirely on market performance. If the market crashes the year you retire, you lose. If inflation runs wild, your fixed income becomes worthless. The security you were promised has been replaced by a gamble, and you have no choice but to accept it, because you are 53 years old, because switching jobs means starting over, because the trap has already closed. But here's where the system turns truly deadly. The pension fund managers are not neutral stewards of your money. They are profit-driven entities. They take management fees, usually 1 to 2% annually. That sounds small, but over 30 years those fees compound. They devour 20 to 30% of your total returns. You work your entire life, you defer wages. You sacrifice time with your family, and a significant portion of your retirement fund is siphoned off by intermediaries who risked nothing. This is not a flaw in the system. This is the system working exactly as designed. Let me give you a modern example. CalPERS, the California Public Employees Retirement System, one of the largest pension funds in the world. In the early 2000s, it was hailed as a model of stability. Then came the financial crisis of 2008. The fund lost over $100 billion in value. Workers who had contributed for decades watched their security evaporate. The fund managers kept their salaries. The politicians kept their offices. The workers bore the loss. And here is the cruelest part. Those workers could not simply withdraw their contributions and leave. They were contractually bound. The losses were socialized. The gains, when they returned, were privatized. Stage 5 is the realization. You reach retirement age. You finally access the pension. And the monthly payment is a fraction of what you expected. Inflation has eroded the value. Healthcare costs have exploded. The projections you were shown 30 years ago were based on assumptions that no longer hold. The cost of living has tripled. Your pension has not. You are not living in comfort. You are rationing medication. You are choosing between heating and eating. The promise was a lie. Not because someone made a mistake, but because the promise was always structured to fail. The pension was designed to provide just enough to keep you from becoming a visible social problem, but never enough to give you actual freedom. And this is where history loops back on itself. Remember the feudal subsistence model. Give them enough to survive, never enough to leave. The pension system is the same mechanism, dressed in actuarial tables and tax codes. You spent your life working to feed a fund that was always designed to pay out less than you put in, when adjusted for inflation and opportunity costs. You could have invested that money yourself. You could have bought assets. You could have built something that your children would inherit. But the system funneled your wealth into a structure controlled by others. And when that structure failed, As it was always going to fail, you had no recourse. Stage 6 is the final trap, dependency in old age. You cannot go back to work, your body is worn, your skills are outdated, the pension, inadequate as it is, becomes your only lifeline. And so you accept it. You accept the poverty. You accept the indignity. Because the alternative is homelessness. The system has successfully extracted 40 years of labor from you, paid you a fraction of the value you created, and left you too old and too broke to fight back. This is not failure. This is victory. Their victory. The numbers have changed, but the leash is exactly the same length. In medieval Europe, a peasant could not leave the manor because he would lose his subsistence. In industrial Britain, a factory worker could not leave the company because he would lose his welfare. In modern America, you cannot leave your career because you would lose your pension. The trap has been rebranded, financialized, wrapped in the language of retirement planning and fiduciary responsibility. But it is still a trap, and you are still inside it. But here is the part they really do not want you to understand. The pension system is not collapsing by accident. It is collapsing by design. Across the developed world, pension funds are underfunded by trillions of dollars. States and corporations have made promises they know they cannot keep. They have used pension contributions to plug budget holes, to finance wars, to bail out banks, and when the bills come due, they will do what they have always done. They will cut benefits, they will raise retirement ages, they will means test payments, they will blame longevity, they will blame demographics, they will blame anything except the truth. The truth is that the pension was always a tool to extract wealth and labor from the working class. It was never meant to make you safe. It was meant to make you compliant. This is not a conspiracy. This is a business model, and it has been operating in plain sight for centuries. Every generation believes they have it better than the last. Better contracts, better protections, better laws. But the core mechanism never changes. You trade your labor for a promise. The promise is always deferred. And by the time you realize the promise was empty, you are too old to do anything about it. This is the retirement lie. And it is still being sold to millions of people right now, today, in boardrooms and government offices and HR orientations across the world. So what do? You start by seeing the system for what it is. You stop treating your pension as a guarantee and start treating it as one small piece of a larger strategy. You build multiple income streams. You acquire assets that cannot be devalued by a board vote or a market crash. You educate yourself on how wealth actually works, not how you are told it works. You break the psychological dependency that makes you tolerate exploitation because you fear losing your deferred compensation. You reclaim your labor. You reclaim your time. You reclaim your future. The cage is real, but the lock is in your mind. And once you see how the trap was built, once you understand that the pension was never about your security, but always about their control, you can start to dismantle it. Not by asking permission, not by waiting for reform, but by walking away from the premise entirely. If this opened your eyes to the cage you are living in, subscribe. Because in the next video, we dismantle the rest of the illusion.